There's a lot of questions that I'm asking myself and a lot of checking myself. Am I focusing on the thing that's actually important, or do I need to let go of something else that I've been holding on to too tightly?
Welcome to Scrapbook Your Way, the show that explores the breadth of ways to be a memory keeper today. I'm your host, Jennifer Wilson, owner of Simple Scrapper and author of The New Rules of Scrapbooking. This is episode 172. In this episode, I'm joined by Allie Edwards for a candid conversation about releasing control in life and crafting. We chat about making intentional choices to find balance, letting go again and again and again, and why she's the most relaxed about scrapbooking. Hey, Allie, welcome to Scrapbook Your Way.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to chat with you. I know we were talking just before we jumped on about how this is a long time coming.
Yes, that is
Yeah.
for sure. I've wanted to have you on, and I was waiting for kind of the right topic to just come across my desk, and this was definitely the one. But
Yeah.
can you kick things off by sharing a little bit about yourself, if for those of our listeners that may not know you very well?
Sure. My name is Allie Edwards, and I am a Pacific Northwest person. Grew up in the Pacific Northwest and live in Oregon. I am currently part of a blended family. We've got 5 kids from 13 to 20. And that's a big part, I feel like, of life right now, specifically not dealing with, celebrating teenagers. That's what we're doing.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And I started scrapbooking when Simon, who's my 20-year-old, when he was a little less than a year old. And so I've been scrapbooking since then. So that's, almost 20 years now, a little close to 20 years. And can't imagine my life without it. It's something that is just so ingrained in who I am, the photography, the writing, the storytelling, the crafting, just all of it. It's just such a piece of my life. And when I first started, I never imagined that it would be what it is in terms of a business that supports our family and things like that. I just did it because I loved it and it was fun and had opportunities come my way, and it just kind of ballooned from there to where now I have a website and we have products and classes and all the good stuff to help support people that want to tell their stories.
Yeah, it's been incredible to watch your growth. I think I found you either December Daily 2009 or 2010, and I was
Yeah.
just so intrigued about what are you doing with all these little pages? And back then it was very almost more like it is now, like very mixed media. Let's combine all the things together and
Yeah, it's gone through lots of phases. I love projects, so I like things that have a beginning and an end, and I think as we talk more about some of your questions later on, I think that's something that I'm really like, I just really enjoy that part. Like, I don't necessarily feel like I need to be scrapbooking all of the time, every single thing, but having some of these projects that I can return to again and again. I'm really good at consistency.
yes.
Returning back again and building community around projects and having it be something that a lot of people do together, I think has been really, really fun and life-giving.
Well, those projects have kind of natural boundaries, and I think we'll talk a little bit about how that kind of helps, I
Yes.
think, both of us.
Yep. I love boundaries. Give me the
Yes.
boundaries. Yeah. Yep.
So I love to ask my guests, what is exciting you right now in memory keeping? It could just be a random product, an app, a class, a person, an idea, something that you've come across that's really lighting your fire.
So I think you are probably gonna laugh at what my answer to this is, but my answer right now is not doing all the things. Like,
Mm,
that's the thing that is actually the most exciting to me, and really trying to, like, I'm continually trying to take my own temperature of, like, how much is too much and how much do I wanna do and how many stories do I wanna tell, and, kind of this, there's a constant, for a variety of reasons, kind of this constant questions that are rolling around in my head. And I think giving myself a little bit more permission to not do all the things and to be able to step back in certain areas is actually the most exciting
it
um,
can be, yeah.
thing to me. There's always going to be more products, right? There's always going to be more interesting people coming up. There's always just going to be more stuff. But I think for me, I feel most excited about really kind of coming to terms for myself of not having to do all of the things and still be able to be a part of the community, even if you're not participating in every single project or doing, storytelling every
Yeah.
day, which I think is just not realistic anyway.
Well, and I know that gosh, so many different thoughts.
Yeah,
I
I
know I'm
bet.
always asking myself about, like, what is enough
Yep.
in a day, a project, in a quarter, a year, and constantly asking that question of, "Okay, how does this feel? Can I go a bit less, or do I need to work a little bit harder? Do I need to push myself?" How do we redefine enough as our
Yeah.
lives are always evolving?
Yes, totally. And I think that the constant questioning can be exhausting also. Where it's where we spend a lot of time in that space of like, is this the right thing? Is this enough? Am I doing enough? Am I not doing enough? Which I think is just probably for a lot of people personality wise, just something that there's a lot of questions and a lot. So
Yes,
yeah. So
we're always thinking.
yes, yes. I would definitely say though, yeah.
As someone who creates a lot of products and a lot of classes and a lot of opportunities for people, it's kind of a unique point of encouraging that thoughtfulness upon your customers and your community, while still delivering all the things.
Yeah, I think it's such it's been such an interesting experience to me to go from a space where it was just me, right, for a long,
Hmm.
long, long time, like whether it was product design or creating classes, like it was just me doing my own thing. And as a team has grown, for a lot of reasons, partly just because there was no way to grow without bringing on other people. Like, I just can't do it all myself, and I am not driven in the same way that other people might be driven to go, 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 and build, 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 and I'm kind of more of like a slow growth kind of person, and sometimes it takes me a long time, I think, to realize, "Oh, it would be okay for me to step away from this, in the way that it is, so that it can continue on without me to some extent, and be just something that is for the community of people that wanna participate." I don't know if that makes sense. It's kinda,
No, it does. It
um
reminds me kind of succulents and cactuses because I always kill them because I overtend them. And so
yeah.
I think it's that example of like some things they get to a point you need to maybe step back a little bit for allow the thing to thrive.
Well, and also what you said, like, you mentioned, designing products too, and I think that that's something that people don't always understand. Like, I am one of the people that is sitting here at my computer, actually designing the products, right? Like, I am sitting here and I'm doing the cards and I'm doing, stickers and I'm doing a variety of different things, which I love, but that in and of itself takes up a great deal of space in your head, like, to get in
Mhm.
that mode where you're creating those kinds of things, and then the shifting back and forth between that piece of it, as well as "Okay, now I'm gonna create a class, and now I'm gonna make a video for YouTube, and now I'm going to just scrapbook to share scrapbook pages." There's so many different pieces, I think, of what we do, and from a business standpoint, our goal lately has been, how can we get me doing the things that I am really enjoying doing, and then have other people that can take care of some of the other different things, which then expands the community just, by bringing in additional voices and additional people and all of that. So it's a
Well,
it's an
go
ongoing.
ahead.
I was just gonna say
Yeah,
it's
no,
ongoing.
it's when I think you've talked about how you've needed help just to figure out, okay, what month are we working in right now? Am I in the present? Am I in the future?
Yeah.
Because you're constantly delivering things that are new to the customer, but then also planning for something that's next year at the same time.
Yes, I'm almost gonna say crazy. It's just a really interesting cycle. So, like, right
Yep.
now, the what I'm working on, that I'm not posting on social media and whatever, is that I'm working on design work for next year. So I'm doing some things that will come out throughout the year, next year, like day in the life, some of the project design sort of thing. So that's really, you know, I'm here during regular working hours just working on that design work. And to be able to have somebody else that is monitoring our social media accounts or posting to the social media accounts has really enabled me to be able to just focus on what I need to focus on right now. And
Mhm.
then I'll shift again to we have like another scrapbook kit coming out, black and white scrapbook kit. So I'll shift to making projects for that. But letting other people do some of the other things, I think, has been a huge learning experience for me, as well as, like, I can't imagine not letting go of a lot of those pieces because I just couldn't do it all.
So we'll get into more of that, but first I have another question for you.
Go, go, go.
We also love to talk about our memory keeping bucket list. So this is a story that feels really important to tell. It can be, it can be difficult, it can be challenging, it can also be, more trivial and lighthearted, but it feels like significant. So what is one story that's still on your memory keeping bucket list?
So one of the I've started this one. So I started a garden journal this year, like a garden notebook where
Mhm.
I am just adding, photos of flowers, stories about things I'm doing in the yard, and I am loving working on that project. And I don't know that it qualifies as a bucket list, but it's something that I'm definitely really excited about right now. And like I need to go with need, want to. I always have like the needs, shoulds, blah blah. I want to put a few more stories into that and keep up with that. That's really one of my kind of outside focuses right now. Um, I tell so many stories all the time, like, and I don't shy away really from the hard stories, and I just kind of am telling stories all the time. So it's harder for me to think of like what's a bucket list story,
Mhm.
because a lot of times they just come up too, right? Like I'll be like, oh, okay, I need to do something with this black and white paper, so I'll scroll back through my photos and be like, oh yeah, I could tell that story today. Like that feels like a good story. But nothing that's like super burning. The garden one I just really enjoy because I love having a home for all the pictures of the stuff that I do in my yard, and the basic things. Because that's really my hobby, where, for a lot of people, memory keeping is their hobby. And for me, it's more of a job, but it's a job that I love, but it's nice to have like a gardening hobby and something that I can go outside and not have to think about memory keeping specifically when I'm out there.
Well, and I think sometimes you look at your photo feed and you see there's a theme here. Like, yes, I'm taking everyday life photos, I'm taking big moment photos, but then there's a lot of this one thing. Like right now for me, it's my cats.
Yes.
And for you, it's your gardening.
Oh, I could do one on my cats too, yeah, big time cats, yes,
We
cats
have to
forever.
like almost create a project to have
Yeah,
a home for those because they can
yeah,
overtake maybe more of the everyday storytelling because there is more than just the gardening and the cats.
totally, totally, and I think that I really one of the things that I value in memory keeping is to be able to see like things together.
Mhm.
So, like in the past, when I've done Project Life, it would be a big combination of lots of different things, right? And I loved that project when I was working on it. I just got to a point where I was like, this isn't fitting what I want to do for myself anymore. But being able to have one binder or one, in this case, like traveler's notebook that's just for those garden stories. Like I'm super
Mhm.
excited to finish that one for this year and be able to see all of those stories in one place that tell a bigger story, right? There's a bigger
Yes.
story than each one of those individual little photos too.
Well, I think things like garden stories or other home things where or even like recipes where
Yeah.
there's like the little bit of legacy aspect or even just the record keeping of this is what I did, this is where I put
Yes.
it. It's helpful to just to remember for the future.
Yeah. Record keeping is a good term. I really like that because that's kind of part of what I wanted to be doing in this garden notebook is record keeping, right? Of just even noting, like, when did I plant? What was the date when I planted something? Because half the time I plant stuff and then I don't remember, and then it comes
Yeah.
up and I'm like, "Is that a plant or is that a weed? I hope that's a plant." But yeah, having record keeping is something that yeah, I love that term.
Yeah, we have a debate every year about how to properly prune our lilac. And so it's
Oh,
more on, okay, did the lilac turn out well this year? Okay, do that again.
yes,
Versus,
yes.
oh, it really didn't turn out well this year. There were almost no blooms. We must have done something wrong.
Yes,
It's
and that's such a good example of something that I think that I haven't done a lot of that I would like to, because especially in the yard, because there's such a big time difference between those things,
mhm.
like where it's a year later and you're like, "What did I do last year?
You think you're
What
gonna
did
remember, but
No,
yeah.
you don't. No, like, and what was that thing I planted there? So, yeah, that's a little bit of the approach I'm wanting to take with that. I think it's still more structured maybe that I want it to be in terms of how I'm approaching it, like, I'm, like, still being really crafty with it rather than letting it be, just record keeping. I kinda want it to be a mix. I don't know, these are just thoughts I'm having about it.
Sometimes it's hard. I started a little bullet journal and I wanted it to be more documentation, record keeping, just like more like note taking. But then
Yeah.
I found myself going creative with it and I'm like, oh, well, what is this now? And like sometimes our own natural tendencies come out anyway.
Yeah, so it sounds like you might be kinda like me where you wanna define it, right? Like
Yes. But
you
it's
want
sometimes hard. I also resist the definition sometimes.
That's all. I do too. I'm totally like, "Nope, nope, nope, up, recognize that's happening. Nope, don't wanna do that." Yeah,
It
yeah,
can be
I
hard.
get you. So totally.
So the topic that I came up with for us to chat about is letting go of control in our lives and our creativity because you've been open that this is something you've continued to work on, have to actively practice, and
Mhm.
you've already mentioned some things related to business. But I'm curious if you look back in your life, is there a particular memory from growing up that stands out as a moment you realized that maybe you had more of a type A personality or you had perfectionism? What what do you remember?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I When I think back, I think that I often think more about, like, why am I like this? Like,
Hmm.
why is this something for me? And I think in my household growing up, I had really strict parents, parents that were strict and that had high expectations, and a lot of kind of do as well, not a lot. There was some do as I say, not as I do, and some other issues that I think also added to probably what was just my own personality traits, but added to the desire to want to control my environment or
Hmm.
control what's happening to me because I had some lack of control when I was growing up based on, inability to make certain decisions and things that my parents just took on. And so I think that that has definitely influenced. I'm the oldest of three kids, so I definitely have a little bit of that. I am a 1 on the Enneagram scale, so I'm very into what's right and right and wrong, and, like things to be a certain way. But the control part, when I look back, I can't identify a specific time, like when I was a teenager, where I noticed, oh, I am a perfectionist, because I think at that time I still saw it as a strength. Like, oh, oh, I'm gonna kill this thing, and I'm so great at like that kind of stuff, or saw the perfectionism traits more as a positive rather than a negative. And so as I try to think, like, at what point in my life did I realize that that wasn't gonna work for me anymore? I wonder a little bit if some of that was influenced, like, when Simon was born, before he turned 2, he was diagnosed with autism, or
Hmm.
actually when he was around 3. And I think that that probably more than anything in my life impacted, uh my like, it's kind of like the start of letting go, I think, for me. The start of the time where I was like, nothing is gonna be the way that I envisioned it was gonna be, and that was gonna be okay, and we're just gonna move forward in how that is. And so, lots of other, I think, areas of my life where I bumped against that desire for control. But with Simon, I've just learned so many things over the years of working on figuring out what's actually important in the moment and what's not important.
Mm.
That's what I continue to work on all the time is, is this something that's actually important and I need to stop everything to focus on it? Or is this my mind, playing tricks on me and trying to act like something else is actually important when it's not? And a lot of, like, kind of like we said in the beginning, like, there's a lot of questions that I'm asking myself and a lot of checking myself. I think I'm always kind of checking myself, like, am I focusing on the thing that's actually important, or do I need to let go of something else that I've been holding on to too tightly?
Yeah, sometimes we kind of find ourselves doing the things we know we don't want to do. We have this vision of, okay, I want more, let's just say like more space or peace or relaxation in my life, and then you find yourself doing things that don't support that in any way.
Yeah, right, we make choices that go against what would be better,
Yeah.
for ourselves, but I also think it's, there's a lot of societal things that go into it too, and in my family of origin, it was very, like, being a successful person felt like that was high on the list,
Mhm.
of things that we were supposed to do, right? Go to college and find a good job, and, even if I was going to be a stay-at-home mom situation, I would still know how to play golf so that if my husband or the business people I was gonna work with played golf, then I would know how to play golf. It was that was kind of the vibe growing up. I mean, there were, it's everybody's own family story has lots of chapters and things too, and mine's the same as everyone else's in that respect.
Sure, there's always a sense of expectation, whether it's positive direction or a negative
Right.
direction.
Yeah,
So
and I don't even know, like, I can probably argue that there were positive things about that too, but I think where I sit in life right now as a 46-year-old person, the things that I value now, which are significantly different, it's like, saying no and slowing down and not overscheduling and, valuing family time or, the how our family is doing, over lots of other things too.
what I'm trying to imagine how this works for others in terms of like those big shifts in your life, whether it's
Yeah.
when you had children, got married, entered a blended family,
Oh.
all those things. Maybe somebody had a significant illness, or as you mentioned, a significant diagnosis. Those things make us pause
Yeah.
and think about, okay, what do I need to accept to move on here, and
Yes.
do I need to let go of something in order to move on?
Right. And it's not simple.
No.
It's not simple and it's not easy, and, mentioning the blended family piece, like, that was another huge shift, I think, for me. I mean, we waited quite a while and were very, conscientious about whether or not we were gonna move in together, so he has 3 kids and I have 2 kids,
Mhm.
and we really wanted to make sure that we felt like it was gonna be the right choice for the majority of the people, and, it was definitely the right choice, I'm really glad we did it. It also definitely took me years to, um, readjust, I think, just in having more people and having different people and having a whole new, 4 new personalities and lots and lots of letting go over and over and over again, I think
Yes.
has built up my stamina for, and my own resiliency, right? My own stamina for letting go, because there was no way that I was ever gonna be able to control all the different things that were going on, and this is still, I mean, it's still stuff that comes up for me regularly with teenagers too, and trying to figure out, what kind of parents we wanna be, and, we're still figuring it out, right? It's like, just an ongoing, probably once they move out, I'm still gonna be trying to figure out what kind of parent I wanna be.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Right?
What
Then it's a different stage of parenting, and you gotta have a different evolution then too.
You're always a parent, so
Yeah. Yeah.
I I was just thinking that I don't think I would be a scrapbooker if it wasn't for having entered a blended family, because I moved here and we were in a small house with I had 2 teenage boys and a new
Mm.
husband and a big dog, and I'd never had a dog before, and so I hid out in the bedroom for the first year with my laptop, and that's how I found scrapbooking.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I needed that time to kind of adjust and figure out, okay, how do I fit into all of this, and how is this going to work? And my I had to do a lot of letting go for sure.
Yep.
There was
Yep.
no control.
I think it is definitely a transition and
Mhm.
not an easy one even when you have the best of intentions. I think it's just the that is what it is, and if you can make it through that and learn a little bit about yourself along the way, I think you're doing pretty good. Doing
For
pretty
sure.
good. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So, one of the projects you lead is One Little Word. And this is where a participant selects a word to connect with and explore throughout the year. How has this particular project helped you kind of stop holding on so tight?
I think it is 100% the project where I am the most personally honest in the project. So
Mm.
for me, I think we started doing a class in 2011 was the first year that I did a class, and that was when it was with big picture classes back many moons ago now. And the reason why we did a class in the beginning was because I'd been picking a word for a few years, but I wanted the consistency of a project around the practice of having a word, because otherwise I won't do it. Like that's just me. I just know that if I don't have some reason that I have to keep doing it, then I won't do it. And so from the very beginning, it was for me a very personal project. Like it was the place where I wrote about the highs and lows, and maybe things that I wouldn't necessarily put on a scrapbook page, even though I tell lots of wide variety of stories there too. But it was the place where I really was the most honest, and have given myself over the years the opportunity to say my truth, right? Or say things that were true for me related to whatever word I was picking. Because for me, each year I pick a word, but I also usually have some underlying thing that I'm trying to work on, right? Or something that
Mhm.
I would some adjustment that I would like to make in my life, or just something I want to focus on. I mean, really for me, that's the whole point of it, is having something I can focus on for 12 months, and then I'll pick something else. And so over the years, it's just those albums are the kind of the home of my growth, right? Like my personal growth from, before I was divorced and after I was divorced and before I met Aaron and after I met Aaron, who's my current husband. And just it's kind of the place where those stories are told, and I give myself permission to work on things, right? And to try to see things in different ways. And I think doing that for the last 10 or so years, um, actively in a classroom situation where I didn't have a choice whether or not I got to show up, like had to show up every month. Um, that works for me in terms of bringing me back to the project, and it's worked for me, I think, in my own development as a person.
Do you think that there's been a letting go in terms of sharing so openly that that was something that you had to actively, like, practice and allow yourself to do? Um,
I
and,
think in
particularly last year, I mean, you've always been very open and honest, but last year you got very, very personal. Um,
Yeah, I think, let's see, that's a good question. I think that it's a practice. I think that I've always felt like from the beginning, I never shied away, especially in that class, like in the recordings.
mhm,
It would be really interesting for me to go back and like listen to, because I record a message every month, right? Previously in the previous versions of the class, it was just me, and so it was me recording myself talking to the camera about whatever the prompt was, and like sharing whatever was happening in my own life. So there's been lots of that kind of sharing. Like it just became the place for that for me. And then just generally sharing feels different to me now than it did before. And I think that has a lot to do with social media, a lot to do with like the stakes feel so much higher
mm,
related to personal sharing, that I find myself sometimes confused. Um, I don't know if confused is afraid, confused, unsure, of the things I want to share. How much do I can want to continue sharing? Like those are things I've been wrestling with like for the last couple of years. In the classroom itself, I don't have as many, in there I'm kind of like, let's just be real, right? Like we
mhm,
need a
mhm.
place where we can be real. We can share the hard parts and I'm going to swear. I don't know if I can swear on your podcast. The
It's
parts that
okay.
are hard, all those different pieces. So for me, it's been a really um, valuable project. Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting that you talk about kind of that the tension, the difficulty in sharing on social media and what's okay and how do you wanna connect with that or
Yeah.
intentionally disconnect, but I also know from my own growth as the older I get, the less I care what other people think too,
Yep. Yep.
and the
It's
more I'm willing to
that's
just, like, put it all out
yes,
there.
and I think that that's the dance that I've been doing,
Yeah.
because I feel like I tend more towards that now, but I'm still like, is this the place where I wanna say all my things?
Mhm.
I'm thinking specifically of, like, Instagram, right? Like, is this the place where I wanna say all my things? And I don't know that it's the place that I wanna say all my things. Like, I think that's what keeps coming up for me. I don't know. I'm on a love-hate with it right now.
Well, and those platforms keep changing under us, and there's more and
Yes.
more and I think they will continue to change. There'll be new platforms that we can't even, like, dream of right now.
Right, right?
You know,
Yeah,
what
I
comes
mean,
after
yes.
TikTok.
Yeah, I mean,
So
for me, like, I started doing all of this when there was no Facebook and there was no
Mhm.
Instagram, there was no social media at the time when I first started. Like, I started a blog in 2004, and so that was kind of what it was at that time until Facebook started, and then, yeah, yeah.
It's run away
It's
from
a th
there, so
it's a thing, it's a
yeah.
thing, and I actually I mean, I do invest time, like, in trying to learn about the reasons why maybe it's not very good for us, and
Mhm.
and I think the more time I spend reading about that kind of stuff, the more I'm like, I still wanna scrapbook, I still wanna tell my stories, I still wanna do, all of the different memory keeping things, but maybe I don't wanna participate in the same way that I was participating previously. That's kind of where I'm at.
Well, and I imagine you wanna connect with your community too, and how do you do that in a way that balances those desires as well as the reality of the world?
100%. 100%. And, like, I think it was a year ago or a little bit over a year ago when I said that I was gonna not be on Facebook, and I'm not actively posting on there, and I'm not participating in the Facebook groups except for even for our company, except for, one little word, because that one I just haven't been able to let go of in the same way. But it definitely has, been good for my mental health to take a step back from even though I wanna participate in the community, it's really hard for me sometimes not like, I still creep on there sometimes, and I peek in there and see what's happening, but I think for me, I am the person who can feel a lot of responsibility, and so I was taking a lot of responsibility for all of the different things that were happening, on any of our social media channels, and it just at a certain point is just too much,
Yeah.
and needed to take a step back. So that's been good for my mental health, and we've got other people that are participating and, creating community and hopefully serving our community in a really good way in those spaces too.
Oh, they definitely are. I'm curious, is there another aspect of your personal life, or is this the one that stands out the most, where you feel like you've made progress, opening up to uncertainty or imperfection, and what have you seen from that?
Oh, I'd say th it's has n every piece of my life, every piece of it has been touched
Mhm.
by this in one way or another. A lot of it has to do, I think, just even here in our own house of all of the different things that I've been working on letting go of. A lot for me right now personally is just related to teenagers and the way that I grew up and bumping up against a lot of, me thinking it was, it's supposed to be a certain way and actually but me not thinking that at the same time, like me knowing that, wait a minute, this isn't the way that you didn't like the way that it was done before. You probably don't want to do it this way this time, but that's still my initial response is to be strict. And so that's a therapy for me, right? I mean, I'm going to therapy because it's helping me figure out,
Mhm.
how to actually be the person that I want to be. So lots and lots of letting go related to that, letting go of things like in our house too, we got boxes around, like, keeping a really tidy house is, like, one of the least important things to me now, and I think previously that was something that I cared a lot more about, and now I'm like, "Is everybody happy? Is
Yes.
everybody okay?" Like, checking in with each one of those kids and Aaron too of, like, "How is everybody doing? Are we okay? Blah, blah, blah." It's my focus is way more on that than, what the living room looks like.
Because I think sometimes we kind of get on that hamster wheel of just of living, but then we forget to also connect at the same time. You have to intentionally pause, which I feel like I've used your word now a couple times here,
Yeah. No,
so
it's such a good
because
word, this word,
it's so
yes.
relevant for what you're going through.
Yeah, 100%, because if you don't if you lack the ability to pause, then you
Mhm.
lack the ability to see what's happening around you, right? Like you get it can be so easy to have tunnel vision of like, I'm living in this space. This is the space I am in. I have no control. When really we have lots of opportunity to make different choices, whether it's the in decisions we make or how we interact with other people in our families. Yeah, I'm just working a lot on when the moments show up when I have an initial reaction and I'm like, "Wait a minute, that is actually." I have to pause and go like, "Wait, that's not how I wanna react in this situation. I'm gonna do something different." And so a lot of my
Mhm.
energy, I think right now is going into, that kind of stuff just with our kids too, which is fun and joyful, and I love having them around, and they're not all gonna be around for very long, right? Like, it's a
Yes,
fleeting
yes.
sort of thing. But yeah, I
Well,
think definitely the letting go infiltrates everything. Yeah.
and I think the more you practice that, I think the easier it gets too. Like you're kind of training yourself in a new mental groove to maybe react differently or react just with a pause.
100%, and then being able to transfer what you learn in one area of your life into another area of your life. Like, as we're
Yes.
talking here, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about so Katie Jager, who works for me and has worked for me, she was started as a nanny, for Anna when Anna was born. She's my 13-year-old, and now Katie's, like, the boss of our business. Like, she's the one that she's handles the vast majority and tells me what to do, which is great. Like, that's I'm here for that. But that in and of itself too was like years of the two of us getting to know each other, years of me starting to let go of certain things to be like, okay, why don't you be in charge of that now? And that took me a long time. Like, I am not the person that's going to be like, oh yeah, okay, somebody else can be the boss of that now. But just like you said, from all of the years of doing that and practicing letting go, now where I sit today, I am much more likely to say, "Yeah, that's not I'm not gonna do that. Somebody else could do that," or like, "That doesn't fit into what I need to be working on right now. We need to have somebody else, do that thing." Or for me to go, "Oh my god, I'm holding on way too tight to whatever it is right now," and I can feel that in my body, I think after practicing for so many years, um, it has physical manifestations when I am trying to control things that, pop up in my body versus when I'm letting it go.
Yeah, it can feel like like it feels weird and a little exciting, like, "Oh, somebody else can do that."
Yes.
But wait, should I let them do that? Like, is it
Yes.
gonna be okay? And you
Yes.
go through the whole mental conversation
Yes.
about it.
I'm sure Katie would have lots of stories actually about that, about her, hanging in there while I, make decisions on, yes, okay, I'm gonna let go of that, and it's a trust, a relationship that's been built on trust over many, many years too, to where I'm like, "Yes, you're right. Okay, good. Yep, let's have somebody else do that so that I can focus on this other thing."
Well, I think it's definitely been this evolution, but in the past year, I think I've seen kind of a jump in terms of you handing off even more creative leadership to guest instructors, to your team members. How has that felt as you've gone through it?
It's been great, and I think for that is the culmination of lots of years, right? Of lots of years of letting go of different little things here and there, but
Mhm.
also coming to the point in the lifespan of, or my own life of how long, lots of questions, right? Of how long am I working? How long, does this business exist without me? That's one of our big questions, right? That we've
Mhm.
been now investigating. Is this something that can live beyond me, even if even if I'm always participating to some degree, which that will always be an option, or if I decide I wanted to do something else, which I'm not doing anything else right now. But I think it's some of that is a result of getting to that point in the evolution of the business to just say, okay, let's start putting some things in place now, for when the time comes when I'm like, I would like to pivot and do something else, or I would like to, just do the story class stuff or whatever it is at that point in time. So there's a little bit of that, but that is also definitely paired, with cultural revelations and my own desire to not have everything be about me, and that there are so many more people in our community that are amazing at storytelling, amazing at creating, that it just doesn't need to be about me all the time, which still sounds weird when I say it out loud because but that's the reality, and I am much more interested in seeing projects from a wider variety of people than seeing my own projects.
So you've been piloting a new brand ambassador program. So how
Yes.
does that fit into this evolution in terms
So
of expressing your goals and your reality of understanding the world?
yeah, so that fits in 100%. I think we have had amazing creative team members, many long-term creative team members that have worked with us for a long time. And when we first started doing that, the main criteria that we had was that we wanted people that included words in their projects, right? So if you are new to scrapbooking, let's say you're just here, there's a wide variety of ways that people scrapbook. And some people include lots of words in their projects, and other people are, maybe tend towards more just the creative play of it, right? And they like to
Mhm.
layer things, and they like to play with color, and they like to do all those other things. But for my brand, what I wanted people that were interested in storytelling and including words in their projects. It doesn't have to be all the time, but that is one of their main focuses. And so that really played into how we selected our creative team, along with being able to take lovely looking photos, right? And have your
Sure.
white balance correct, and things like that. So some of the technical pieces. But we got to a certain point, and this is both Katie and I for sure, where it just didn't the creative team, bringing people like the process of having it's almost like you're grading people, right? Like people are applying for this team, and then if you are selected, then that changes your status or whatever. I don't know. I hope that I'm explaining this correctly. um we just didn't want to I didn't want to play that game anymore, I think, of you're good enough. So you can be on this team, and then we have to say no to other people. So what we decided to do was try to reimagine it. Like, what is a different way that we could do this where we have a wider diversity, not only of ethnicities, but of the ways that people tell stories, right? Lots of different people using our products to tell their stories. So, what is a way that we can have a bigger table and not have it be in the way that it was in the past? And so this is our starting place. So switching to a brand ambassador program with, our long-term goal is to have it be the kind of thing where if anybody wants to participate in it, they can be a brand ambassador. And there's like one requirement. This is not the same as a creative team in the past. Um, so that's kind of where we're at. Like we're just we want to have more people involved and more people included, and look for opportunities to highlight just the wider variety of stories that are being told, because there's a wider variety of people living. I mean, obviously some of it sounds so obvious when I say it, but the world is not just all people using white cardstock and long words on their projects. So that's where we're heading. It's very imperfect, and we recognize that it's going to be imperfect, but we want to move in that direction, and so we that's what we did. Yeah.
Well, I think it's very exciting, and I think it's an important model for the industry because obviously there's a lot of design teams out there, and I know they've all been wrestling with this question of how do we make the work that individuals are creating on our behalf reflect the broader diversity of scrapbookers that are out there.
Yeah. It just got to the point where I didn't wanna do it anymore, and I
Yeah.
didn't want Katie to do it anymore, and we needed to come up with a different solution. And so this is like I said, this is our starting point. And I would also say that we are definitely, like, as a team, every decision that we make, we are asking ourselves, is there someone else that can be included here? Who
Mhm.
could we highlight that is different than someone we've highlighted before? Like
I
that's
love
a
that.
become a significantly more of a core piece of our decision making. Again, not perfect, and we'll
Mhm.
always have people that we work with because that we rely on, we've come to rely on, right? So there will be repeat people from time to time, but we also want to make sure that we are creating a bigger table.
Well, I think as you take off your teaching hat a little bit more and let others share it and wear it, I've seen more kind of you following along with others' prompts, and I'm
Yeah.
curious if that is easier or more difficult than creating something just original from your head.
I actually really enjoy following along with other people, and seeing what they are doing. I would say I am this is gonna sound funny because I am a rule follower, but with creativity, I'm not always. So if somebody
Mhm.
and, you might be like this too, Jennifer, I don't know. Like, if somebody tells me what to do, I like, in a class situation, I still will probably do it different than the way well, however it was, like, said to do it. I think that that's just a part of my own personality, and I'm laughing to myself because when I was in school for graphic design and I had like, a figure drawing class, and everybody's trying to make these, lifelike figure drawings of people, which I don't really have any interest in at all. So I was, like, very shape-based, so my people were,
Mhm.
like, these cubist kinds of
That's really cool.
people. Because I was like, I don't really, I'm interested in shapes and I'm interested in how shapes combine together, which is, how bodies are, right? Bodies are made of shapes too. But that's a good example of kind of a peek into my personality, I think sometimes too. But I love having other people teach. I think that teaching is such a let's see, how do I even explain this? Like, being able to teach other people how to do things or to share something in a teaching way is a path towards learning, right? We
Mm,
learn
yes,
more
yes.
about ourselves through the process of teaching other people how to do things. And so letting other people, giving other people opportunities to teach, I think is great for the community overall, and it also gives people the opportunity to learn from different people, right? Or different ways of doing things. Again, that it's not like just because I've, created this space for myself within this industry, it still doesn't mean that I know everything, right? Right. And that I am the be all end all. I think that it's way better when it's a community of people working together.
Well, I think I've seen this most notably with you and stamping because you said that you're not like the most technique fancy,
No.
expert stamper, but you're excited to learn. You love the products
Yeah.
and you've been learning from others and demonstrating from that kind
Yep.
of the student perspective.
Yeah. I never have any expectation about myself that I should be the expert on all things. Like, that's just not. And I think for a long time there, even with before we started working with Laura Wanzik or, like, having other people do stamping stuff, like stamping is just something for me. Like, I do love stamps, but I'm not passionate about it in the ways that other people are. And I'm like, I've been
Mhm.
adding stamps onto my projects forever. Like, back when it was just, there weren't even acrylic stamps, there were just wood block stamps. Like, I've
Yeah.
always loved that kind of messy, the imperfect quality of adding those things into my projects. But, there's other people like Jennifer McGuire or even Kathy Zilski now who use stamps in really amazing ways, not necessarily in memory keeping, but, way more for cards. But there are all these other people that know way more, and why, I would rather highlight people that know more than me, that, I'm just sticking the stamp on the underneath my photo and calling it good. But I like the play, like recently where I did a bunch of stamping, on layouts that then I put into a YouTube series. Like, that was fun too, right? Here's the stamps that I need to use. It's kind of the starting place. And then what are the stories that I'm going to use that those stamps can support? Like, that's kind of my outlook on those ones.
I know it took me a long time to just use anything other than black ink because
Oh,
black was always
still.
reliable.
I'm still yeah, I still tend towards black. Like, black, the Stays On is my go-to. It's just the thing that's always on my desk, and then I have to kinda remember that I have other, colors there. But I think, like, for me, that's one of the things I'm liking about how I'm working right now is, okay, here we have a new stamp release coming up, so I'm gonna do a bunch of projects with that, and that can be my main focus, right? And I'm using the stamps as the jumping off point. Okay, I know I'm going to use this stamp in this project. What's a way that I can use this to support my story or to just try something different, or lots of alphabets are what I still continue to love. But yeah, being able to start with that as the jumping off point, I think that the stamps particularly works has worked really well for me in terms of incorporating more of those into my projects too.
Yes, when it's fun to just have a different starting point because we can all I love how you can choose a stamp or a product or a story or a photo. There's always an entry point into doing something else, and I think we sometimes have this pressure to to choose one as, like, the right way, rather
Yes.
than just, like, pick the thing and
Yeah.
then make the thing.
Yep. Pick the thing and make the thing is 100 I'm 100% behind that. Yeah, for sure. Yep.
So as you are, whether it's creating projects or designing for something that's coming out in the future, do you ever feel pressure that the next thing needs to be even more epic than the last?
That's a good question. I don't I've said let's see if I can remember the story. I have an antidote, like a story antidote's not the right word. I have a story that was related to something sometime really with Heidi Swap and I, where Heidi is an innovator and I am a sustainer. I don't know if you've ever heard me say that
Ooh,
before.
no.
Um, but it's very much like over the I've known Heidi for a long time now, and she's somebody that I think is obviously very, very creative and loves thinking up new, products or new ways to use the products. And I am more of the person that's like, let's do the project again. We're going to do the
Mhm.
same thing again. And maybe we're going to tweak a few things this time. So I don't really think in terms of epic. Like, that's not my goal, isn't to make the next coolest, most epic thing. My goal is how can we keep this, how can we continue to have this be a relevant project? Right? How
Mm,
can we continue to make this project or how, when we're designing the products for, like, I'm thinking of December Daily in my head right
yeah.
now. Like what are the things that we can add to this year's collection which are actually going to give people more opportunity to focus on their story, right? Like those are the ways that we kind of think about it. So it's not epic in terms of we're going to, create the coolest thing ever, but more focused on the sustainability of the project, I think. Um,
Mm.
yeah.
And I've noticed that with in terms of just, like, kind of shifting the types of products that you offer, more homes for your stories, as you've
Yep.
said, and
Yep.
ways that we can just get more of those words onto the page or onto the pocket or
Yeah.
star-shaped card or
Right,
whatever
whatever.
easier.
Yes, whatever it is, whether you're wanting to work, outside of the page protector versus inside the page protector. I just and I would say that I think gets back to that letting go too, right? There's a little bit of that of not feeling like that every scrapbook page needs to fit into one size, right? So for me, for many
Yes.
years, I did 12 by 12 scrapbooking, right? I did that for years and years, and then I did a few 8.5 by 11 size pages, and then I did Project Life, and then I've been doing lots and lots of 6 by 8 pages outside of the page protector now. Like, that's kind of what my home, my current memory keeping home is in that size, and I love it. Like, I'm really happy there, and so I'm gonna keep doing it there until I am bored of that, and then I wanna move on to something else, and I wanna normalize that for everybody. Right, that it doesn't matter what size you're working in right now or what size I'm working in. It's like, what is gonna help you tell your stories in a way that you wanna do it, that there's not a
Yes.
right or a wrong, right? I've been saying that all along also. Not a right or a wrong. You can change your mind, and, like, I thought at first I was like, "Notebooks? Nope, not doing those. I don't need another thing to do. I don't need to do a notebook." And now I'm totally like, "I love notebooks. Notebooks are great." So, I can be wrong.
Well, I
Yeah.
think when we kind of, force ourselves into, like, because I've always done it this way, I have
Yes.
to continue doing it,
Yes.
that's when we lose inspiration, that's when we lose motivation and kind of maybe even stop altogether because we're butting up against our own, like, creative desires.
Yes. Yep, 100%. Or even like that, if like I used to care a lot about my albums matching. That used to be
Mhm.
something I used to care about. I do not care about that anymore. Like I've got so many albums of different sizes, colors, shapes, like that I think I did a video, I think this is last year I did a video about how, the albums are just the home, right? Like you said a couple
Yes.
minutes ago, right? The albums are just the vessel. The albums are the home for all the stories. I don't really care what they look like on the outside, because it's the stuff on the inside that really matters to me. But those are the things that can trip people up, right? They're like, "Oh my god, I can't get the same album to have my, 20 albums the same color, and no, so no, I'm not gonna do it anymore."
I think that particular video was really, significant last year because I kept hearing it be referred to again and again in terms of, allowing our community to embrace more of that, letting go of things being matchy-matchy
Yeah.
in terms of like, let's see our albums as homes, containers for our
Containers. Yep.
stories and really focus on what's inside, as you
Yeah.
said. So
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
I want to talk just a little bit about making mistakes. So, particularly when stamping is probably one of the best examples, but
Yep.
journaling, there's all kinds of opportunities to screw up in scrapbooking. And you tend to have a very positive attitude when it comes to this. And I'm curious, are there any like totally frustrated swearing clips we don't see where something goes in the trash and you're just pissed off for a bit and then you redo it?
I love this
Or does that
question. Yeah, I love this question when I read it, when you gave it to me before. Um, I can only this I don't know if this is sounds crazy or not. I can only think of, like, 1 or 2 times that I actually threw something in the garbage.
Okay.
So, for me, it is very unlikely that I would bag a whole thing completely. I think it's more likely that I would be like, "Yeah, I don't love this as much, but I'm already this far into it, and I'm just gonna finish it because I know it's just gonna go into a collection of many, 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 many other stories,"
Mhm.
right? And so that is one of the areas I think in my life where I am very flexible and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I made a mistake, so now I'm going to reprint the photo." Or, I cut that wrong, so now I'm gonna try to cut it again. I think one of the reasons why I don't have a lot of freakouts about it maybe is partly because we have so many digital options so that
Mm.
I can almost always reprint something. So that probably plays into it a little bit. The things that will make me the most frustrated in my office are computer problems. If I have any problems with the computer, with the printers, which is, the printer problems come up. So
It
that's when
happens, yeah.
yeah, so I don't have any videos of me like swearing at my printer, but that definitely happens from time to time of like, like even a couple weeks ago, I think it was because I installed like a new version of Photoshop. And so then it didn't maintain like the color profiles that I had previously. So it
Yes.
was printing out these horrible colors. And I just was like, most of the time for me, it's like I don't have enough time. Like I'm like on some sort of deadline where I'm like, this can't be the problem right now. Um, so yeah, I would say more printer related issues than just when I'm at my desk working. Most of the time, I am very flexible and can be like, oh, what? Okay, that didn't work, and now I need to reprint this again, or I need to cover that up, or do something else. So that's pretty true to how I work. Um,
Do you think that came with time and just having done this for so long?
I think it's possible. I think that I'm also like maybe there are other areas in my life where I am more rigid, and this is
Mhm.
not one of them. Like that's kind of what I feel like about it, that it's I can't think of a time where it was really like, "Oh my god, I made such a huge mistake that I'm gonna freak out about it." Because I think most of the time it's something that can be redone. And the
Yeah,
practice for me probably has been that there's sometimes when if I have typed up journaling and I've made a mistake. I mean, sometimes I leave it. It kind of depends on what the mistake is. But there's also times
certainly.
where like if I don't find it, then or if I do find it, that I'll reprint it like 4 times. Like that happens, and so sometimes you don't always see that on the video, but I try to leave those kinds of things in too, where I'll be like, "Oh, yeah, here I am. I just reprinted that one again. Yep, nope, found another thing now. I'm reprinting that
Or
one
cut the
again."
thing weird or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah, or
so yeah.
whatever it is that happened. Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about it in terms of my personality too, and this just seems to be an area where I'm like, "All right, like, we'll just move on." But there are tons of other areas in my life where I get really mad about things. How want more control over how things are going too.
Well, that's so interesting to think about in terms of maybe that's part of how you've been able to have turn a hobby into a business and allow it to thrive because you don't have that same sense of control and perfectionism over it.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's interesting, and I think that like, on the flip side of like, from the creative standpoint of the business, that is definitely true. I think on the back end of the business, um, I definitely have struggled more with wanting to be in control, and that's taken longer
Mhm.
for me to let go of some of those kinds of things. So I think that that's an interesting way to look at it, because I in my head, I can separate, like, I'm making a scrapbook page and I'm doing something crafty, and I love doing that. I would be doing it anyway, even if it wasn't a part of my job. But then there are other parts of my job that are like the, more hardcore businessy things where there's definitely been times where I've had a harder time letting go or
Certainly.
not being in control of stuff, which has resulted in swearing and other bigger frustrations. Yeah, it's real. It's real.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we all get frustrated. We all have to deal with the everydays of life.
Yep.
So,
Yep. All the time.
are there any particular kind of projects or practices that particularly help you step out of perfectionism? And maybe I'm leading here because I'm particularly thinking of your marks on a page that you were doing last year in
Yeah.
painting and
Yeah.
other things that really like help you be even more free.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so the painting thing, that is really fun, and I actually really, really enjoy that, like doing painting or doing like mixed media sort of stuff. And I did that for a
Mhm.
while last year, and then I can't really remember why I stopped. I just got out of the habit. I don't know if that like bumped up against December daily stuff or what. Sometimes it gets just really busy in terms of project happenings that or design work or things that I have to do where I'm like, okay, there's just I don't have enough time for that in the day. So I put all that away for a while, and I've been thinking about pulling it back out again because it really is a good practice. It's a really good practice for me in having it be that there isn't an end result besides just what it is. Like I'm
Mm,
not doing
mhm.
it to monetize it. I'm not doing it to sell prints. I'm just doing it to explore color, right? Or explore shapes. And I think that was really good for me. I really do also think that therapy generally is really good. And so I always like to make sure that I'm normalizing that as a because perfectionism is part of what we talk about when I am, going there, and it's lots of, from lots of different angles. I've also read, I can't think of any books off the top of my head right now, but it's something that I like to read about too, the process of letting go. And I think definitely when I went through the divorce and a lot of the reading that I did at that time was things about being cracked open
Mhm.
and what is that like, and how do you navigate through that uh, in a way where you're still holding on to whatever your most authentic self is. um, yeah, lots and lots and lots of letting go over time. Yeah.
Well, you're just an amazing role model for our community, and I appreciate all the things that you do.
You're so nice. Congratulations on your rebrand too. I've
Thank
I've been
you.
meaning to reach out and tell you. I've long been watching what you do, and I love your aesthetic, and I love how you approach um approaching your own community and the community that you've built there. I think it's just really beautiful. So I'm happy to get this chance to talk to you.
I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah.
So, just to wrap up here, Week in the Life is coming up at the end of June. It's a little bit different timing this year.
Yeah, mixing it
How
up. Mixing it up.
Yeah, how can our listeners use this type of documenting project as an opportunity for themselves to practice some releasing of control?
Oh man, this is an intense project to release control on. So Week in the Life 7-day documenting project. I think one of the biggest things that people can do to release control is to just not feel like you have to take a picture of everything and
Mm,
not feel like it's day in the life times 7, right? It doesn't have to be that way. It can be as much of an overview of your week as you want it to. You can be a major deep dive. I mean, most of the times when I've done this project, it's a significant deep dive, and the reason why I do it that way is because I've just learned over time that I really love having 1 week of a deep dive, right? 1 week in our life over the last however many years now that I've been doing it that just kind of shows what's the flow and, what are people into and those kinds of things. But it can also just be, you decide you want to take 5 photos each day over the course of the week, and that can be a really beautiful representation of what your life looks like right now. And I think that's one of the things that I hope with, the either the brand ambassadors or just showcasing more people in the community is showing different ways that people do these projects, right? That they can be done in a mini book or they can be done in a bigger album. Like that there's so many different ways that it can be approached. It doesn't have to just be in this, the specific way that I do it or the specific way that we've seen it done before.
Yeah, one thing that stands out to me is being okay with taking bad photos. I think
Yeah.
that happens for week in the life or day in the life or December daily, anything where you're taking probably more photos than usual.
Yep.
There's an active need, at least for me, to practice. Okay, objective here is to capture what's real, not to take the most perfect, beautiful photo
Yes.
ever.
100%. Yeah. Yes. I totally believe in that for sure. And I think that a lot of that, right, there's a lot of letting go in that, like letting go of this need to take a perfect picture. And then I always am like, well, what's a perfect picture anyway? Like some of my most favorite pictures are the grainy
Mhm.
pictures that I've taken of all of our family together, like sitting on the couch, right? Or sitting around the dining room table. Like the fact that I have years and years and years of those kinds of photos where not everybody's looking at the camera, but they're all in the
Mhm.
space together. Like those are some of my most valuable ones. The color might be totally off, so I turn it to black and white, and then it's even more that I like it even more
Yeah.
after that. But yeah. I think the opportunity it's the project is a great opportunity to practice photography just in and of itself, but also, like you said, a great opportunity to practice like owning what your own story is. I mean, I feel like it comes
Mhm.
back to that a lot, right? Because if you're taking pictures around your house and all you're thinking as you take those pictures is, I hate my house, I hate this, I don't like this, you're thinking about all the things that you don't like this actually can be an opportunity to either change what you don't like, right? Do something different, or to embrace that this is the life that you are living and you have a choice of how you want to approach that, and that impacts the way you look through the lens of your camera.
Mm. What a beautiful way to end this conversation, because I think
Woo-hoo.
that so much gets at the heart of memory keeping,
Yeah,
that we get to see our lives through our creativity, and that helps us, live better.
that's what I believe 100% after doing this for so long. Yep.
Can you share where our listeners can find you online and anything else new or fun you have coming up?
Yeah, you can find me, allieedwards.com. That's where we have blog and shop and classes and all of those things. You can also find me on Instagram. I'm at Allie Edwards. And then we have a business Instagram account with lots of, information about products and projects. That's at Allie Edwards Design Inc. on Instagram. Those are kind of the main places. We also have a Facebook group called Craft the Story, and that's another place where people are doing lots of sharing, lots of community sharing happening in there. The only other thing we have coming up besides Week in the Life is our travel release is coming, I think, next week. Yeah, I believe it's next week. So that is kind of the next project round that many people get very excited about the travel stuff. So
Yeah,
that's
because we're
next,
all excited about traveling again,
right?
so
I know. Yes, I know. We went to Las Vegas last weekend, for a birthday party, and that was really fun and, felt different to be out and about, and got another trip coming up with, taking Simon to Star Wars Celebration, which is like the big Star Wars convention. That's next week, so we're
ooh,
really looking forward to that one. Yeah,
that sounds fun.
Star Wars deep dive. But yeah,
Well, Allie, thank
that's
you
about
so
it.
much for your
Yeah,
time.
you're welcome, Jennifer. I really enjoyed chatting with you. Thank you for having me on.
And to all of our listeners, please remember that you have permission to scrapbook your way. Hey friends, thanks so much for listening to Scrapbook Your Way. If you would like to start moving past perfectionism, our free workbook can help. Letting go starts with identifying your real priorities and finding focus. Visit simplescrapper.com/focus to have the Focus Finder workbook sent to your inbox.